Hello, everybody. This is Brooke Walker back with another episode of How to Leave a Cult. I have some news today. Um, this will be the last episode. I wanted to come on, kind of explain why, kind of give a synopsis of some things, but essentially, um, my heart is not in this podcast anymore. And it's been a great experience. And I felt like I at least needed to come on here and kind of sum up a few things so that there's a little bit of an ending to where I was going. My intention was always to kind of go through the ending of leaving the cult and then talk about, um, go into some more of the healing that I went through after the fact. And it's just, I can't make myself do this. Like there was a point when I first started doing this podcast that I enjoyed it and I looked forward to the next episode and I was creating the next episodes and had them like all kind of lined out, and now it's like the idea of doing it just causes me stress, and I just like I've already been through too much to try to dedicate something that doesn't bring me joy and that I have to like force myself into. And at this point, this has kind of become something that I force myself into. And if anything that I've learned to honor where I'm at. I spent years of my life forcing myself to do things because of the way that I was raised, between the relationships I had, between you know the people that I had to have in my life. So I think that that's something that at some point came very easily to me. And, like pushing through. But the reality is, I don't have to. I don't have to make myself do things that I don't want to do. And as much as this has been a great experience, and as much as I appreciate the many people that have listened to my story and have reached out to me and shared their stories with me, um, I it's been wonderful, and it's just time that it's over now. So, but I want to kind of wrap things up today. So, one of the things I wanted to kind of talk about where I left off in the story, and I'm going to kind of give some clarity on how things happened after that. Partially because the biggest question I ever get asked is, how did you get out? What made you leave? Things like that. And I've always explained to people, it was these small moments over time. It wasn't one incident. So, and I've shared enough of my story to explain like one of the things that made me leave was my divorce. Now, I didn't leave for more than, 10 years after that, but I didn't have any skills to get out of there before that. I was a single mother by then, and I had never paid a bill in my life, and I had barely worked any jobs. Um, I don't know if I had worked a single job outside of the cult. So even though I had, and I didn't have anything more than a GED at the time. Like I wasn't like somebody who could like just take off and had anywhere I could have gone. So there was that. But then there was these moments over time, and I think the story that I shared over the last two episodes of the relationship that really took a huge toll on me and then caused all these physical problems. I ended up having to get heart surgery. And it was an ablation. So it's not like the most invasive thing. I didn't get, my heart cracked open, but I had heart set surgery where they had to go in. And that was a huge wake up call for me. I was looking at, you know, the way that I lived my life, I still didn't equate it to being the cult's fault. Like, I thought it was all my fault. And then shortly after, I moved to Austin for a couple years. That was a great experience, actually. But I was still so tied into everything, I came running back because of all the things that I felt like I, it was almost once again like I had like forsaken what I had been raised in. And so when anything didn't go right in my life, the perception that I had was, oh my gosh, it's because I'm not doing Duran's teaching well enough. And that's what religion can do to you. Can religion can be set up to lie that when something doesn't go well in your life, that it's because you're not following the dogma. That's bullshit, by the way. Life goes up, life goes down, with or without religion, or with it. I believe in having some spiritual beliefs, but my life got exponentially better as soon as I left the cult. And the breakdown of leaving was more of the same. And it started getting into my kids and interactions with my kids and other children in the cult, and fights with parents, fights between me and other parents. And there was bullying that went on when we left. The same thing that happened to everybody else happened to us. The same thing that we did to everybody else, where we cut people off, all of a sudden we were cut off. And it was devastating. It was absolutely devastating to grow up from the age of being like 8 with all these people and all these relationships. And then all of a sudden one day, you make a boundary, and next thing you know, nobody will talk to you ever again. Even the people that were neutral don't talk to you anymore. Or they're just, the coldness means that you're trying to have a relationship with somebody that doesn't reciprocate on any level, with somebody that you used to feel like that you had a good relationship with. And so there's a lot of side taking. And by then I had worked really hard to get my degree. I got my bachelor's degree in psychology. I did it in about 2.5 years. I basically fast tracked. I was working full time. I was raising 2 children, and I was going to school. And I just worked my tail off. And then we come back from Austin, and then I'm working, and then I have to start working for Steve Wrench in his law office, which was the biggest fucking train wreck you've ever seen, because it was run by him and his family, and they were toxic as fuck. There's all these attorneys that worked for him that had nothing to do with the cult, and I am sure they hated it. Like, I'm sure it was just a train wreck they didn't know was coming. But I do know that after that, he did end up getting a bar complaint, and I'm pretty sure it's because of one of those attorneys, because I'm pretty sure he was completely mismanaging his IOLTA account. Some of you, that won't mean anything. Some of you, it will. If you understand what that means, it's a big deal. So then I finally got a job that was outside of the cult that paid me not shit, because Steve Wrench paid me crap. And I started really focusing on my health and wellness, especially since I had these physical things that I had had in the past. I focused on me and my kids. My priority in life was building a beautiful life for me and my children. Um, I started watching TED Talks. I started reading. I just started diving into things that started to feed my soul. I started going to therapy. I stopped yelling at my children. And I took out a lot of negative things that used to come out of my mouth. Um, all of my family didn't get out at the same time, but we did all get out, and we're all fairly close now. I love my. I mean, obviously, I've told you guys a ton of times. I mean, how much my children mean to me. But I love my siblings, and I love my parents. And I think that that's another thing that I've gotten is how could you forgive your parent? How could you forgive your parents? And I spent a long time with that. I, first off, my parents are not the people they were in the cult. After we got out, we all went through a lot of changes and a lot of growth and a lot of therapy. But my parents, had they had they could have done it differently, they would have. And I always come back to the silver lining of if I hadn't been in the cult, I think there's probably no way that I probably would have ever been in a relationship with Colin, and I don't think I would have had my kids. And those are two amazing humans that I feel blessed that I've gotten to mother. And like that's a gift to me. And so you have to like look at the things that you've been through. You can wish that you didn't have the trauma, the pain, but it can only go so far before you take away gifts that you've gotten from it. So, my family was pretty jumbled for a while after getting out, but then we slowly started coming back together. And I tell you, like, forgiveness, and I've talked about forgiveness before, forgiveness was a very difficult thing to learn. And I spent a long time listening to, reading, watching documentaries about people who were able to forgive. And I took situations a lot worse than living in a cult. And I kind of like was like, well, if these people can do it, can I do it? And also, who am I forgiving and what am I forgiving? And so I think I've talked about forgiving other people, like the people that wronged you, and being able to get past that. And, but like, I guess I want to address my parents. It was very difficult for me to not have the relationship that I wanted to have with my grandparents. As an adult, I looked at that and I was like, I wish I had the opportunity to do that. And my parents had a lot of cutoffs with their parents because of the cult. Now, they may have had legitimate stuff that happened with they were younger, but the cult cut my grandparents off. And I thought about what if I cut my parents off? What if I cut my kids off from my parents? And I had to take a look at where my parents were at. My parents were not the same. They were not doing the same things. And I really felt like cutting them out of my life would cause more pain rather than being able to heal. And I didn't feel like it was the best for me. And I didn't feel like it's the best for my kids. So I know sometimes people talk about these moments where we're talking about forgiveness. Now, you can forgive and not let somebody back into your life. You can forgive and let them back into your life. It's completely up to you. I don't tell you what you should or shouldn't do. I took a look at my situation. I weighed different options. I weighed the value of that. And I wanted my children to have a relationship with their grandparents. I wanted to still have a relationship with my parents. And my parents have helped in the healing too, because I've been able to go and ask questions as after getting out about clarity about situations. And we've had some good conversations. We've had some great conversations. I mean, they're painful because there was a lot of pain that occurred during so many years of our life. They have pain about it. I have pain about it. My kids have pain about it. So I never tell people you should or shouldn't forgive and let somebody back into your life, but I do think you should always forgive for your own well-being. I think it's important, and I think it's powerful. But again, it's your choice. And more on that is that there's a lot of stuff about holding on to things. And if you read stuff about holding on to negative experiences that have happened to you, it's not good. It's just not good for you. It's not good for you. So I would say that was a big thing. So we got out. It was probably 2 years of therapy, or probably 2 years from getting out, and maybe a year of therapy before I realized that we had been in a cult. Um, And I remember when I went to my therapist, I was like, always like, oh, well, it was just really a dysfunctional. Oh, it was just really just like a really fucked up, family situation. And then I was like, I was in a cult. I was in a cult. And he's like, oh, that's interesting. He's like, you've never used that word before. And I was like, no, no, it was definitely a cult. And it took me years to really figure that out. And I think the difficult thing about that is taking a look at those relationships and realizing that somebody that you thought cared for you, specifically the ministers and the people that ran the church, and Trina and Stephen Camp, that their bigger goal was to manipulate and use for their needs. And it's hard when a relationship ends to look at something and seeing that you were used and treated a certain way, and that you didn't see it. And there's a lot of shame that comes up with that. And the whole reason I've ever done this podcast is because I felt like if I shared my story, it would help other people share their stories and get clarity and find a place to healing, because I feel like shame hides in the shadows. Shame hides in the shadows. And when you bring things to light, and you can think about all the shit going on in our country and the things that are trying to be brought to light that nobody seems to want to, you know, um, I think it's important that people understand the atrocities that went on so that we do not repeat them. And so that we can say to people, this was dysfunctional, and this is why you shouldn't keep doing this, and this is how this relationship becomes manipulative, and this is how people are using situations. And doing that helps so that people don't repeat, and so that you can heal. And I have been fortunate enough in doing this podcast that I have heard so many stories from people that came out of Stephen and Trina's fucking cult. And pretty much everybody has asked me not to share. And I'm not going to share today, but I'm going to say some things that have been common in all of those stories. Everybody was treated in a way that they were manipulated, they were used, and they felt thrown away. But the one thing that I think that I've found that's fascinating that I think that we miss, people don't join cults. People don't say, "Hey, I'm going to sign up and I'm going to join a cult today." People join communities where they see like-minded people who they feel like love and support them. Now, I don't think a lot of people who joined the Church of Immortal Consciousness joined it because of Trina and Steven. I think they joined it because of all the other people. Because one of the biggest things I've heard from people who've shared their stories from me that were in the church is how much pain they have for the other people that they cared for and that they loved. You guys had friendships. I don't know why it's making me cry, but you guys helped each other raise each other's children. There's women that helped breastfeed other women's children when they were going through things. There's, you patched each other's up, you listened to each other cry, you cared about each other on a deep level. You lived together in homes together. And sometimes it was a handful of years, sometimes it was a decade or more. The pain people have about being in these situations is that they legitimately felt like they had friends that were more like family that were going to be there for life. And then when they didn't fit with the culture anymore and they decided that shit didn't work with Steven and Trina Camp and Steven cut things off, or you were fortunate enough to get the fuck out at whatever stage you were at, you were cut off completely. And so you were left with these memories of people that you felt like were family. And I'm not necessarily talking about Steven and Trina Camp. I'm talking about the people that you lived next to, that were there for you, that loved you, that fed you, that got up in the morning and had a cup of coffee with you, that celebrated things and had a beer at night. That's the pain. And so getting out of a cult, it's like, to me, I've explained it like it's like joining witness protection. You have to build a life where you leave everything you've ever known behind, including your faith. And that is so hard. Leaving your faith behind when it's been everything, and when you've been raised in it as a child, devastating. But you have to leave thinking that you may be losing your family. So like, I knew I was getting out with my kids, but I didn't know if I was going to have some of the relationships with my siblings or my parents initially. Then you have to, it kind of depends where you're at career wise, because a lot of people did depend on each other for some of the career stuff, depended. Um, and plus, you didn't know if they were going to trash whatever business you might have, because they were those kind of people that would try to do that. There was a lot of those kinds of attacks. And then you left behind every friend you had for every deep friend that you had. And then you had to change your entire belief set of spiritual beliefs and what those meant to you. And then you're left questioning, what do they mean to you? What does it mean to you? So it's a huge level of devastation. And going through it, honestly, I so grateful because the first thing I found was that I didn't have anxiety over the relationships that I had there. And I was able to rebuild healthy relationships. And I began to sit down and create goals. And I would write down all the things I want, which was including having a really good relationship with my children, which they were teenagers when we got out. It was really rough. But I wanted to create a relationship with my parents and my siblings as well, and my nieces and my nephews. You know, there was a lot of things that I started going, okay, if I could have the best version of this, what would that be? I basically started rewriting everything and I got really set on goal setting. And I was like, okay, if I could create the best version of this, what would it be? Which included career, life, children, um, leisure activities, relationships across the board, relationships with family, with friends, with a significant other, and healthy mindset in my own self, physical health. Like I started going through and I took all the areas of life and I was like, what would be the best case scenario for all these things? And I wouldn't be sharing and I wouldn't have created this podcast if there wasn't a good, if there hadn't been a great ending. And I have done those things. I always wanted to do this to share with you guys that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And, you know, if you do the work to heal and if you create the vision of what you want your future to be, you can make it. Like, you don't have dreams to not make them happen. They don't always work out the way you think they will, but you've got dreams to create what you want. And I have been able to, it was several years before I got to the point that I had begun to create a really healthy relationship with my kids, and it continues to grow. And it was a long time before I started working on my physical health. And that's something that, physical health is always a thing, eat, take care of yourself, exercise. But I started running and I started doing half marathons and I started doing marathons and I started doing Ragnars and I've done a half Ironman. I've done 2 half Ironmans. And I just started chasing goals that I enjoyed chasing. And I started rethinking the way I thought things should be. And I took a look at what I thought a healthy, significant other relationship would be. And I'm in a relationship with a man that I absolutely adore. I could not have I don't think I could have imagined how good that is. And I'm building a career that is fulfilling and I enjoy every day and I make great fucking money. And I really love the life that I've built. And going through what I went through in the cult was put a million negative adjectives on it, but I've found the places where I could find silver linings from different things. And I can't take it away. Like, it happened. So I have to accept that it happened, and I have to, be able to be okay with that. And I still work on it when things come up. But the interesting thing about healing is it's not like you all of a sudden wake up one day and all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, I'm healed. Like it's comes out in much different ways, meaning that, like, moments of peace are peaceful. I celebrate my wins more. I don't beat myself up the way that I had. I enjoy the people that I'm with. And some of it's just having moments of quiet that I'm just able to have peace. Healing is enjoying the peace and not having a billion intrusive thoughts that take it away, and a billion I shoulda, coulda, woulda. And so that's kind of where I just turning the page on the podcast. I appreciate everybody who's listened to me. Um, I think I've been told it's been helpful for several people, and I appreciate that I was able to help. I thought I would do this and it would turn into different things, but I just don't have the heart for it. And I'm going to honor the way I feel, which is a good one for me. So, thank you guys. And appreciate you being here. Bye bye.